She was pregnant, hiding, and protected by a ghost until the dawn came home and exposed the lie his entire empire had buried. Now, let me introduce you to Georgia Drummond. The cabin smelled like pine and paranoia. Georgia stood at the window, one hand pressed against the cold glass, the other resting on her swollen belly, 8 months pregnant, hiding in the mountains of Montana, waiting for a man she barely knew to return with groceries and answers. Neither ever came fast enough. Outside, the snow was falling again, thick, silent, suffocating, the kind of snow that buried secrets, the kind that made people disappear. Georgia had been disappearing for 5 months now. 5 months since her brother Declan declared war on the Baldy Empire. 5 months since she became a target simply for sharing his blood. 5 months since a stranger appeared at her apartment door in Brooklyn, told her she had 4 minutes to pack, and drove her across the country without explanation. Flavio. That was the only name he gave. No last name, no history, no warmth. Just cold efficiency and a gun that never left his hip. Georgia hated him at first, hated his silence, hated his control, hated the way he looked at her like she was a problem to solve rather than a person to protect. But hate was exhausting. And somewhere between the safe houses and the sleepless nights, something shifted. She stopped fighting him. He stopped treating her like cargo. And now 8 months pregnant with a dead man's baby, hunted by an empire, protected by a ghost, Georgia Drummond was running out of time. The front door opened. Georgia spun around, heart slamming. But it was just Flavio, tall, dark-haired, sharp-jawed, carrying 2 bags of supplies and wearing the same unreadable expression he always wore. "You should be resting," he said, kicking the door shut. "I was watching the snow." "Snow doesn't need watching." "Neither do I, yet here you are." Flavio set the bags on the counter and turned to face her. His eyes, dark brown, almost black, scanned her the way they always did, checking for threats, checking for weakness. Georgia wasn't sure which one she was. "Anything on the radio?" she asked. "Nothing new. Declan's men are still searching the eastern seaboard. They haven't expanded west yet." Yet, he agreed. Georgia lowered herself onto the worn couch, exhaustion pulling at her bones. The baby kicked hard, insistent, and she winced. Flavio noticed. He always noticed. "I can get you another pillow." "I don't need a pillow. I need this to be over." He didn't respond. Because there was nothing to say. This wouldn't be over until Declan was dead or Georgia was. And Flavio had made it very clear which outcome he was working toward. The question Georgia couldn't shake was why. Why did a stranger risk his life to protect the sister of his enemy? Why did he drive through the night, dodge bullets, kill 3 men in a gas station parking lot, all for a pregnant woman he'd never met? Flavio claimed he owed a debt to someone important, someone who wanted Georgia alive. But he never said who, and Georgia was too afraid to push. That night, the satellite phone rang. Georgia was half asleep on the couch when the sound cut through the silence, shrill, unfamiliar, terrifying. Flavio answered before the second ring, his voice low and controlled. "Yes." Silence. "When?" More silence. Georgia watched his face change. Watched the mask crack just for a second before slamming back into place. Understood. He hung up. "What is it?" Georgia pushed herself upright. "What happened?" Flavio didn't look at her. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched at his sides. "Flavio, talk to me." Finally, he turned. And for the first time in 5 months, Georgia saw something in his eyes that looked like fear. "The dawn is back." Georgia's blood ran cold. "Enzo Baldi? He's been in Sicily for 3 years. He's not supposed to. He landed in New York 2 hours ago." Flavio's voice was steel. "He knows you're alive. He knows I'm the one protecting you. And he knows his empire lied to him about something they should have never buried." "Lied about what?" Flavio met her eyes, and in that single glance, Georgia understood. The ghost protecting her wasn't a stranger at all. He was the Dawn's missing son, the one everyone told Enzo Baldi was dead. And now, the most powerful man on the East Coast was coming not just for Georgia, but for the truth his own family had hidden for a decade. "If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter." Copilot said. Part 2, Character Foundation. Georgia Drummond wasn't. Part 2. Character Foundation. Georgia Drummond wasn't born into chaos. She was dragged into it. 26 years ago, she arrived in a small Connecticut hospital, 6 pounds, 2 ounces, screaming louder than any baby the nurses had seen. Her mother, Colleen, held her for exactly 3 hours before hemorrhaging on the delivery table. Georgia never knew her. Her father, Rupert Drummond, was a defense attorney with a gambling problem and a talent for making enemies. He raised Georgia and her older brother Declan in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, promising them every week that things would get better. They never did. By the time Georgia was 12, Rupert owed 6 figures to the wrong people. By 14, he was gone, vanished in the middle of the night, leaving behind a note that said only, "Keep your brother safe." Georgia tried. God, she tried. But Declan Drummond didn't want safety. He wanted revenge. Declan was 7 years older and 1,000 times angrier. He blamed the Baldi family for their father's disappearance, claimed Rupert had been defending a witness against Enzo Baldi when he vanished. Whether that was true, Georgia never knew. What she knew was this. By 25, Declan had built his own empire. Guns, drugs, territory carved out of Brooklyn and Queens with blood and brutality. He called himself a businessman. The feds called him a crime lord. Georgia called him her brother. And she loved him, despite everything. But love doesn't make someone safe. And Declan Drummond was the most dangerous person Georgia had ever known. The pregnancy wasn't planned. His name was Callum Reese, a lieutenant in Declan's organization. Charming and reckless and absolutely wrong for her. Georgia knew it from the first kiss. Knew it even more when she found out she was carrying his child. Callum promised to leave the life. Promised to take her somewhere safe. Somewhere far from Declan's wars. Promised to be the father their baby deserved. 3 weeks later, he was dead. Shot execution style in a warehouse in Red Hook. The Baldi family claimed responsibility. Declan swore vengeance. And Georgia, pregnant, grieving, terrified, became a pawn in a war she never wanted. That's when Flavio appeared. She still remembered that night. April. Rain hammering the windows. A knock at her apartment door at 2 a.m. Georgia had opened it, expecting one of Declan's men. Instead, she found a stranger tall, soaked, bleeding from a gash above his eyebrow. "You need to come with me," he said. No introduction, no explanation. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who wants you alive." "My brother's men are downstairs," I scream, "and you're dead in 30 seconds. The stranger didn't flinch. "Your brother's men are the reason you need to leave. Declan made a deal tonight, traded information to the Baldi family in exchange for territory. Part of that information was your location." Georgia's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. Declan would never. Declan would sacrifice anyone to win, including you." The stranger stepped closer. "You have 4 minutes to pack. After that I leave. And you die." Georgia packed in 3. 5 months later, she still didn't know if he'd told the truth. Had Declan really sold her out? Was her own brother capable of trading her life for power? She wanted to say no, wanted to believe blood meant something. But every time she reached for that belief, she remembered Callum's body. Remembered how quickly Declan had moved on, not grieving, just strategizing. Remembered the coldness in his eyes when he told her, "This is war, Georgia. People die in war." Maybe she was just another casualty waiting to happen. Flavio never confirmed the story, never showed her proof, but he kept her alive, and that had to mean something. Over the months, she'd learned fragments of who he was. He spoke Italian fluently. He knew the Baldi Empire's operations in disturbing detail. He carried a photograph in his wallet that he never let her see. Once, when he was feverish from a bullet graze, he muttered a name in his sleep. Enzo. Not Baldi, not the Don. Just Enzo. Like a son would say it. Georgia filed that away, waited, watched. And now, finally, the truth was surfacing. "You're his son." Georgia said it the morning after the phone call, standing in the cabin's tiny kitchen while Flavio made coffee he wouldn't drink. He didn't turn around. "I was." "What does that mean?" "It means I was Enzo Baldi's firstborn, his heir. The one he groomed to take over the empire." Flavio's voice was flat, emotionless. "It also means I've been dead to him for 10 years. Why?" Now he turned. And for the first time, Georgia saw the weight he carried, the exhaustion, the grief, the fury he kept locked behind that frozen mask. Because I refused an order, and my father's empire decided death was easier than disobedience. What order? Flavio held her gaze. He told me to kill a woman, a witness who could have destroyed the family. She was pregnant, terrified, begging for her life. Georgia's hand moved instinctively to her belly. I let her go, Flavio continued, helped her disappear. And when my father found out, his second-in-command, a man named Silvio Conti, convinced him I was a traitor. They staged my death, told Enzo I'd been killed by rivals, and for 10 years I've been a ghost. George's mind raced. So when you saved me, I saw her, the woman I saved, pregnant, hunted, alone. Flavio's jaw tightened. I couldn't let it happen again. The cabin fell silent. Georgia stared at the man who had protected her for 5 months, the man she'd hated, then tolerated, then trusted. Now she understood. He wasn't protecting her because of a debt. He was protecting her because she was his redemption. And now his father was coming to collect. The dawn arrived on a Tuesday. Georgia heard the helicopters, first 2 of them, cutting through the mountain silence like black wasps. She was in the kitchen, slicing bread she wouldn't eat, when the sound reached her. Flavio was already moving. Basement. Now. What's happening? They found us. He grabbed her arm, firm but careful, and pulled her toward the hidden door behind the pantry. There's a tunnel. Leads to a service road half a mile east. Keys are in the lockbox. Code is 7419. Georgia's heart slammed against her ribs. You're not coming? I'm buying you time. Flavio. Go. He pushed her toward the basement stairs. Protect the baby. That's all that matters. Georgia wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but the helicopters were landing now, and she could hear boots hitting the ground, voices shouting commands. She ran. The tunnel was narrow, dark, and freezing. Georgia moved as fast as her body allowed, one hand on the rough stone wall, the other cradling her belly. The baby was kicking frantic, agitated, sensing its mother's terror. Almost there. Almost there. Almost there. Light ahead. The exit. Georgia burst through the metal door and stumbled into blinding white snow. The service road stretched before her, empty except for a rusted pickup truck half buried in a drift. She ran toward it, fumbled with the lockbox. 7419. Keys in hand. Then a voice behind her. Georgia Drummond. She froze. The voice was deep, accented, commanding. The voice of a man who had never begged for anything in his life. Georgia turned slowly. Enzo Baldi stood 20 feet away. He was 63 but looked 50, silver hair swept back, dark eyes sharp as razors, dressed in a black overcoat that probably cost more than her entire childhood. 2 armed men flanked him, but he didn't need them. His presence alone was a weapon. You're a difficult woman to find, Enzo said. I wasn't trying to be found. Clearly. He stepped closer. Where is he? Georgia's throat tightened. Who? Don't. Enzo's voice hardened. I've spent 3 years in Sicily mourning a son I was told died in an ambush. 3 years believing my bloodline ended with my failure. And now I discover he's alive, protecting the sister of my enemy, and my entire empire knew. Georgia said nothing. So I'll ask again. Enzo stopped 3 feet from her. Where's Flavio? Before she could answer, gunfire erupted from the cabin. Georgia watched in horror as Flavio emerged from the tree line, bloodied, limping, gun raised. He'd fought through them. All of them. Father. The word came out like a wound. Enzo's composure cracked. Just for a moment. Just enough. Flavio. They stared at each other, father and son, separated by a decade of lies, standing in the snow like strangers. You look old, Flavio said. You look dead. Enzo's voice wavered. They told me you were dead. They lied. Why? Because Silvio Conti wanted your throne, and a living heir was inconvenient. Silence. The armed men shifted nervously. Georgia held her breath. Then Enzo did something Georgia didn't expect. He laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not a relieved laugh. A bitter, broken sound that echoed across the frozen landscape. Silvio, of course. Enzo shook his head. I trusted him like a brother. made him my right hand, and he stole my son. He didn't steal me. He buried me. Flavio lowered his gun, and I let him, because I couldn't be what you wanted. What I wanted was my son. What you wanted was a killer. Flavio's voice cracked. You ordered me to execute a pregnant woman, an innocent, and when I refused, your empire decided I was better off dead. Georgia watched the words land on Enzo like physical blows. The Don stopped, swallowed. I never gave that order. Flavio went still. What? The woman, the witness. I ordered her relocated, protected. Silvio was supposed to arrange safe passage. Enzo's face twisted with fury. He told me you went rogue. Killed her yourself. Said you'd become a liability. The snow fell silently between them. Georgia watched Flavio's expression shift: confusion, doubt, rage. You're lying. I'm many things, Flavio. A liar isn't one of them. Enzo stepped forward. Silvio played us both. He wanted you gone because you were the one person who could challenge his influence. And he wanted that woman dead because she was carrying evidence that could destroy him. Evidence of what? Silvio has been stealing from the family for 15 years. Millions. Hidden accounts. Deals made behind my back. Enzo's eyes burned. The woman you saved, she was his accountant's daughter. She had documents, proof. Georgia's mind raced. The pieces were clicking into place, a conspiracy that spanned a decade, built on lies and buried sons. Where is she now? Flavio demanded. The woman I saved? I don't know. Silvio claimed she died years ago. But if she's alive, if she kept those documents, then we can destroy him. Enzo nodded slowly. Together. Father and son stared at each other. 10 years of silence, 10 years of grief. And now, a chance at something neither expected. Justice. Then Enzo's gaze shifted to Georgia. And her? Flavio moved instinctively, stepping between Georgia and his father. She's under my protection. She's a Drummond. Her brother wants me dead. Her brother sold her out. She's not his ally, she's his victim. Enzo studied Georgia, the pregnant belly, the exhaustion, the defiance still burning in her eyes. Is that true? Georgia lifted her chin. I didn't choose my brother. I didn't choose this war. But I'll do whatever it takes to protect my child. Even if that means standing in front of a man who could kill me with a single word. Silence stretched. Then Enzo smiled. Barely, just a flicker. She has fire. I can see why you're protecting her. He turned to his men. We're leaving. All of us. Back to New York. He looked at Flavio. Silvio doesn't know you're alive. That's our advantage. We move fast, we move quiet, and we burn his empire before he sees us coming. Flavio hesitated. And Georgia? She comes too. Enzo's eyes hardened. If Silvio learns she exists, he'll use her against both of us. She's safest where I can see her. Georgia wanted to argue, wanted to run, but she looked at Flavio, at the man who had saved her life, who had just reunited with the father who thought him dead and made a choice. Fine. She walked toward the helicopter. Into the heart of the empire. Into the fire. Co-pilot said, Number Part 4. Rising Tension. The Baldi Estate. Part 4. Rising Tension. The Baldi Estate was a fortress disguised as a mansion. Georgia stepped out of the black SUV and stared at the sprawling property, iron gates, armed guards, security cameras tracking every movement. The house itself was 3 stories of old-world elegance, surrounded by gardens that probably hid more secrets than flowers. This was enemy territory. No, this was Flavio's home. She had to keep reminding herself of that. Enzo installed her in the East Wing, a private suite with a 4-poster bed, a marble bathroom she refused to describe, and windows that overlooked the Long Island Sound. Beautiful, luxurious. A gilded cage. You'll be safe here, Flavio said, standing in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed inside. I've assigned 2 guards. They answer only to me. And if your father changes his mind about keeping me alive, he won't. You sound certain. Flavio stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. My father respects strength. You showed him strength today. That matters. Georgia lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion finally catching up. The baby shifted inside her, restless, unsettled. "I'm tired of being strong," she admitted. "I'm tired of running. I'm tired of not knowing if I'll live long enough to hold my child." Flavio didn't respond immediately. He crossed the room slowly, stopping beside the window, his reflection ghostly against the glass. "When I was a boy," he said quietly, "my mother used to tell me that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about choosing to stand again after you've shattered." "Your mother sounds wise." "She was." A pause. "She died when I was 14. Cancer. My father never recovered." Georgia studied his profile, the tension in his jaw, the weight in his shoulders. 10 years of exile, 10 years of believing his father wanted him dead. And now he was back, standing in the house where his mother had taken her last breath. "I'm sorry," she said. Flavio turned. "For what?" "For everything you lost, for the years you spent alone, for—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "You didn't cause any of that. Neither did you. But we're both paying for other people's choices." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, connection, the acknowledgement of shared pain. Then he looked away. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start hunting Silvio." He left without another word. Georgia stared at the closed door for a long time. The next 3 weeks were controlled chaos. Enzo summoned his most trusted lieutenants, men who had served him before Silvio's rise, men whose loyalty predated the betrayal. They gathered in the estate's underground war room, planning, strategizing, mapping Silvio's network of corruption. Georgia wasn't invited to those meetings, but Flavio told her everything. Late at night, after the guards changed shifts, he would knock on her door. They'd sit on her balcony, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, and he'd share the day's discoveries. Silvio had been stealing for 15 years, offshore accounts in the Caymans, shell companies in Cyprus, a private army of mercenaries loyal only to him. But the most dangerous revelation was this. Silvio knew Flavio was alive. "One of my father's lieutenants talked," Flavio said on the 19th night. "Bastiano Ferretti. We found his body this morning. Silvio's signature clean shot, no witnesses." George's stomach tightened. "Does Silvio know I'm here?" "Not yet, but he's looking." "What happens when he finds out?" Flavio met her eyes. "I won't let him touch you." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Georgia wanted to push, wanted to demand certainty, safety, promises. But she'd learned enough about Flavio to know he didn't make promises he couldn't keep. Instead, she asked the question that had been burning in her chest for weeks. "Why do you keep coming here? Every night, talking to me. You have a war to fight. You're not just anything." Flavio's voice sharpened. "You're the reason I remembered who I was supposed to be." Georgia blinked. "What?" He stood abruptly, pacing to the balcony's edge. "For 10 years, I survived. That's all. I took jobs, protection, extraction, things I'm not proud of. I told myself I was building towards something, but I wasn't. I was hiding." He turned to face her. "Then I found you. Pregnant, hunted, alone. And suddenly I wasn't just surviving anymore. I had a purpose. Someone who needed me to be more than a ghost." Georgia's heart hammered. "Flavio, I know you don't feel the same. I know you're grieving, Callum. I know this us is complicated and messy and probably impossible." He exhaled. "But I need you to know. You matter. More than you should. More than I planned." The words hung between them like a held breath. Georgia didn't know what to say, didn't know what she felt. Her emotions were tangled: grief for Callum, fear for her baby, something dangerous and unnamed stirring whenever Flavio walked into a room. She stood slowly, crossed the distance between them, took his hand. "I don't know what I feel," she admitted. "I don't know what any of this means. But I know I'm glad you're here. I know I trust you. And right now, that's enough." Flavio looked down at their joined hands. His fingers tightened around hers. "Enough," he repeated softly. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. But it was something. The next morning, everything changed. Georgia woke to shouting downstairs. She pulled on a robe and moved toward the door, but Flavio burst in before she reached it. "We need to move. Now." "What happened?" "Silvio's making his play. He's called an emergency council meeting, Claims he has evidence that my father is unfit to lead. Half the family heads are already on his side. Georgia's blood ran cold. A coup? A takeover. If Silvio wins the council's support, he can remove my father without firing a single shot. Legal, clean, permanent. When? Tonight, midnight. The council meets at the Montague Hotel in Manhattan. Georgia's mind raced. What does your father need to stop him? Proof. The documents from the woman I saved 10 years ago, Silvio's accountant's daughter. If we can prove he's been stealing from the family, the council will turn on him. Do you know where she is? Flavio hesitated. I think so. I've spent the last week tracking her. She changed her name. Moved to Vermont. Runs a small bakery in Burlington. Then go get her. I can't leave you. You can. You have to. Georgia gripped his arm. This is bigger than me, Flavio. This is your family, your father, your future. If Silvio wins tonight, we're all dead anyway. Flavio stared at her, torn, conflicted, terrified. I'll be fine, Georgia insisted. Your father's guards will protect me. Go, find the proof, save your family. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he cupped her face in his hands and pressed his forehead to hers. If anything happens to you. It won't. I'm stronger than I look. Remember? The ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Then he was gone. And Georgia was alone in a mansion full of enemies. Flavio had been gone 4 hours when the power went out. Georgia was in her suite, pacing by the window, when the lights flickered and died. The estate plunged into darkness, no backup generators, no emergency lights. Something was wrong. She moved toward the door, but it wouldn't open. Locked from the outside. Hello? She banged on the wood. Guards? Someone? Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming down the hallway. Georgia backed away from the door, her hand instinctively covering her belly. The baby kicked hard, urgent, as if sensing the danger. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and standing in the darkness was a face she never expected to see again. Declan Drummond, her brother. Hello, little sister. Declan stepped into the room like he owned it. Tall, red-haired, with their father's sharp jaw and their mother's cold blue eyes. He wore a tailored suit, spotless despite whatever violence had gotten him inside. George's legs nearly gave out. How did I find you? How did I get past Enzo's security? Declan smiled. Silvio Conti is a very generous business partner. Turns out we share a common enemy. The pieces clicked into place. Declan and Silvio, working together. You're helping him take over the Baldi Empire. I'm helping myself. Silvio gets the throne. I get the territory Enzo's been blocking for years. And you, Declan's smile faded. You get to come home. Home? Georgia laughed bitterly. You sold me out 5 months ago. You traded my location to the Baldis. Flavio told me everything. Flavio. Declan's face twisted with disgust. The ghost, the dead son. He's been filling your head with lies. He saved my life. He kidnapped you, dragged you across the country, turned you against your own blood. Declan stepped closer. I've spent 5 months searching for you, Georgia. 5 months thinking you were dead. And now I find you here in the enemy's house carrying God knows whose baby. Callum's baby. Georgia's voice cracked. Your lieutenant. The man you got killed. Declan went still. Callum's death wasn't my fault. Everything is your fault. Every death, every war, every choice that put me in danger. Georgia felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. I'm not going with you. You don't have a choice. He grabbed her arm, rough, painful, and started pulling her toward the door. Georgia struggled, but 8 months pregnant against her brother's strength was no contest. She screamed, hoping someone would hear, but the hallway was empty. Bodies lay on the floor, Enzo's guards, unconscious or worse. Silvio's men cleared the wing. Declan said calmly, No one's coming for you. The ghost is in Vermont chasing ghosts of his own. And Enzo is already at the hotel, walking into a trap. George's heart stopped. What trap? The council meeting. It's not just a vote, it's an execution. Silvio's men are inside. The moment Enzo arrives, he dies. And without their precious Dawn, The Baldi empire crumbles. Flavio will stop it. Flavio won't make it back in time. Declan dragged her down the stairs. By morning, Silvio controls the family. I control Brooklyn, and you're safely locked in my compound where you belong. Georgia's mind raced. She needed to warn Flavio, needed to warn Enzo, needed to do something. Then she saw it. A guard's body by the staircase. And beside his limp hand, a phone. Georgia pretended to stumble. My ankle, she gasped, grabbing the railing. Declan cursed. Get up. I can't. The pregnancy, it's too much. He released her arm to check the exit, and Georgia moved. She dropped to her knees, snatched the phone, and shoved it into her robe pocket before Declan turned back. Move, now. She let him pull her up, let him drag her toward the waiting SUV outside, let him believe she was defeated. But her fingers were already typing a message in her pocket. Blind, desperate. Hotel trap. Enzo dies tonight. Silvio plus Declan working together. She hit send and prayed it reached Flavio before it was too late. The SUV tore through the night. Georgia sat in the back, wedged between two of Declan's men, her brother in the passenger seat barking orders into his phone. Silvio's team is in position. ETA 20 minutes. Make sure nobody leaves that hotel alive. Georgia closed her eyes. She'd done what she could. The rest was up to Flavio. But then her pocket buzzed. A reply. She couldn't check it, not with guards on either side, but she felt it vibrate again. And again. Flavio was coming. 20 minutes later, the SUV stopped at a warehouse in the Bronx. Declan's territory, his fortress, the place where he'd rebuilt after losing everything to their father's debts. Georgia was escorted inside past armed men, past shipping containers, past crates of weapons that explained exactly what kind of business her brother really ran. He brought her to a reinforced room in the back. Clean, sparse. A bed, a chair, a locked window. You'll stay here until the dust settles, Declan said. Then we'll talk about your future. I have no future with you. You have no future without me. He stepped closer, voice dropping. The Baldis are finished, Georgia. Enzo dies tonight. Flavio dies trying to save him. And when it's over, I'm the only family you have left. Georgia met his eyes. You stopped being my family the day you chose power over people. Declan's jaw tightened. For a moment, just a moment, something human flickered behind his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or grief. Then it vanished. Get some rest. You'll need it. The door slammed. The lock engaged. And Georgia was alone with her unborn child, and one desperate question. Had her message reached Flavio in time? The Montague Hotel was chaos. Flavio arrived 20 minutes too late. He'd gotten Georgia's message on the road from Vermont Mira Fassetti, the accountant's daughter, in his passenger seat clutching a flash drive that could destroy Silvio Conti. They'd been 90 miles from Manhattan when his phone buzzed. Hotel trap. Enzo dies tonight. Flavio broke every speed limit, ran 3 red lights, prayed for the first time in a decade. Still too late. The lobby was a graveyard. Bodies everywhere, hotel staff, guests, Baldi soldiers. Blood on the walls, shell casings on the floor. The chandelier had fallen, crushing a reception desk beneath it. Silvio's men had come in force. Flavio moved through the carnage, gun raised, heart pounding. Mira stayed behind him, terrified but determined. Where's the council room? She whispered. 3rd floor, ballroom C. They took the service stairs. 2 flights. 3. Flavio's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. The ballroom doors were open. And inside, Enzo Baldi knelt in the center of the room. His hands were bound behind his back. His face was bloody split lip, swollen eye, cuts across his cheekbones. 10 council members sat at the long table, half of them looking satisfied, half terrified. And standing over Enzo, gun pressed to his temple, was Silvio Conti, 61 years old. Silver beard, cold, calculating eyes that had fooled a family for 2 decades. The dawn is finished, Silvio announced to the council. His son was a traitor. His empire is compromised. And tonight, we begin a new era. An era built on lies. Every head turned. Flavio stepped through the doorway, gun aimed at Silvio's chest. Silvio's expression shifted shock, then recognition, then something like amusement. The ghost returns. He didn't lower his weapon. I should have killed you properly 10 years ago. You should have done a lot of things. Flavio moved closer. Instead, you spent 15 years stealing from the family, building your own empire in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Accusations require proof. Proof like this? Mira stepped forward, holding up the flash drive. Bank records, transaction logs, 15 years of theft documented down to the penny. Your accountant kept copies of everything, and his daughter kept them safe. The council members stirred. Whispers rippled through the room. Silvio's smile faltered. That woman is dead. She's very much alive. And she's already sent copies to every major news outlet and federal agency on the East Coast. Flavio's voice hardened. It's over, Silvio. Lower the weapon. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Silvio laughed. You think this changes anything? He pressed the gun harder against Enzo's temple. I pull this trigger, and the council has no choice. I'm the only one left who can lead. You pull that trigger, and my men kill you before the body hits the floor. Flavio gestured toward the windows. Red laser dots appeared on Silvio's chest, 6 of them. I didn't come alone. Silvio's smile died. The room held its breath. Then movement. One of Silvio's lieutenants lunged for Mira. Flavio fired. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. Gunfire. Screaming. Council members diving under tables. Silvio ran for the service exit, dragging Enzo with him. Flavio pursued. The chase led to the hotel's rooftop. Rain was falling now hard, cold, relentless. Silvio stood at the edge, Enzo still in his grip, gun still at his head. Stay back, Silvio screamed. One more step and he dies. Flavio stopped, 10 feet away, rain streaming down his face. Let him go, Silvio. It's finished. It's not finished until I say it is. Silvio's voice cracked. I gave everything to this family, 30 years of loyalty. And what did I get? Second place. Always second to the precious Baldi bloodline. So you stole. You lied. You tried to murder the only family who ever trusted you. They never trusted me. They tolerated me. Silvio's hand was shaking now. But you, the favorite son, you threw it all away for a pregnant stranger. And now you think you can waltz back and reclaim what's mine? Enzo spoke for the first time. Quiet. Calm. It was never yours, Silvio. And the son you're pointing a gun at, he's more Baldi than you'll ever be. Silvio's face contorted with rage. His finger tightened on the trigger. Flavio moved. The shot echoed across the rooftop. But it wasn't Silvio's gun. A sniper's bullet caught Silvio's shoulder, spinning him sideways. His weapon clattered across the concrete. Enzo dropped to his knees, gasping. Flavio closed the distance in 3 strides. He kicked the gun away, pinned Silvio to the ground, and pressed his own weapon to the traitor's skull. Give me one reason not to end you. Silvio laughed wet, broken. You won't. You're too soft. That's why I knew you'd never survive. Flavio's finger tightened. Then Enzo's hand touched his shoulder. Don't. The Don's voice was hoarse. He's not worth your soul. Flavio hesitated. The rain fell. Silvio wheezed beneath him. And slowly, painfully, Flavio lowered the gun. Take him, he said to the approaching guards. Let the council decide his fate. Silvio was dragged away, screaming threats that no one listened to. Flavio helped his father stand. They looked at each other bloody, exhausted, alive. Georgia, Flavio said. Declan took her. Enzo nodded. Then we get her back. We? Enzo gripped his son's shoulder. Together, like we should have been all along. Georgia had been in the warehouse for 6 hours when she heard the explosion. The wall across from her room shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Alarms blared. And somewhere beyond her locked door, men started screaming. She pressed herself into the corner, arms wrapped around her belly, heart slamming against her ribs. Flavio. Please let it be Flavio. The door burst inward. Not Flavio. Declan. Her brother looked wild, shirt untucked, blood on his collar, eyes burning with something between fury and terror. We need to move. Now. What's happening? The Baldis. They found us. He grabbed her arm. Silvio's coup failed. Enzo's alive. And your ghost is tearing through my men like they're made of paper. Georgia's heart soared. Flavio was here. He'd gotten her message. He'd survived. She planted her feet. I'm not going anywhere with you. Georgia. No. She yanked her arm free. You kidnapped me, locked me in a cell, tried to kill the only people who've protected me in months. I'm done, Declan. I'm done being your hostage. Another explosion. Closer this time. The building groaned. Declan's composure cracked. For a moment, Georgia saw something she hadn't seen since they were children: fear. Real, desperate fear. I was trying to save you, he said. Save me? You sold me out. I never... He stopped. Exhaled. 5 months ago, when Silvio approached me, he said the Baldus had put a hit on you, said they were going to use you to hurt me. He offered protection. His people would extract you, hide you, keep you alive until the war was over. Georgia stared at him. That's not what happened. I know that now. Declan's voice broke. Flavio got to you first. And when you disappeared, I thought Silvio had failed. I thought you were dead. So you partnered with the man who wanted to kill me? I partnered with the man who promised me revenge. Declan's eyes glistened. You're all I have left, Georgia. Mom's gone. Dad's gone. You're the only family I have. And when I thought I'd lost you... He didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Georgia watched her brother, this man she'd loved and hated in equal measure, finally crack. And she felt something she didn't expect. Pity. Declan. Her voice softened. The choices you made, the people you hurt, I can't forgive that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. But you're still my brother. And I don't want you to die tonight. Declan looked at her. Really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time in years. What do I do? Surrender. Tell Enzo everything you know about Silvio's network. Cooperate. It won't erase what you've done, but it might keep you alive. The Baldus will kill me anyway. Not if I vouch for you. Declan blinked. You'd do that? After everything? I'd do it because you're my brother. Georgia touched his arm. And because somewhere underneath all this, the violence, the ambition, the rage, there's still the boy who held my hand at Dad's funeral. The one who promised to protect me. Tears slipped down Declan's face. He didn't wipe them away. I'm sorry, Georgia. I'm so sorry. Before she could respond, the door behind them exploded off its hinges. Flavio stood in the smoke like an avenging angel. Blood on his jacket, gun in his hand, eyes scanning the room until they found her. Georgia. She ran to him. He caught her, one arm wrapping around her back, the other cradling her belly, and held her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. I thought I was too late, he breathed against her hair. You're here, that's all that matters. Behind them, Declan stood frozen, waiting for the bullet he knew was coming. Flavio raised his gun. No. Georgia stepped between them. Don't. He kidnapped you. He's also the reason I'm still alive. He didn't hand me to Silvio, he brought me here, kept me separate. If he'd wanted me dead, I would be. Flavio's jaw clenched. His finger hovered over the trigger. Please, Flavio. Georgia took his face in her hands. I know what he's done. I know he deserves punishment. But let the council decide the same way you let them decide Silvio's fate. The warehouse groaned again. Time was running out. Flavio stared at Declan, then at Georgia, then back at Declan. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered the gun. Move wrong, and I'll end you myself. Declan nodded. Understood. They escaped through the loading dock. Enzo's men had secured a perimeter, SUVs waiting, helicopters circling overhead. The Baldi Empire had arrived in full force, and Declan's operation was crumbling. Georgia was ushered into an armored vehicle. Flavio climbed in beside her. Declan was cuffed and placed in a separate transport. As the convoy pulled away, Georgia finally allowed herself to breathe. Is it over? She whispered. Almost. Flavio took her hand. Silvio's in custody. The council has turned on him. And your brother, if he cooperates, might survive long enough to stand trial. What happens to me? Flavio turned to face her. In the dim light of the SUV, his eyes were soft, softer than she'd ever seen them. That depends on what you want. What do you mean? The war is over, Georgia. Enzo's empire is secure. Your brother's network is dismantled. You're free, truly free for the first time in months. He paused. If you want to leave, start over somewhere safe, I'll make it happen. New identity, new life, whatever you need. Georgia felt the weight of his words, the sacrifice behind them. He was offering to let her go, after everything they'd survived together. And if I don't want to leave? Flavio's breath caught. What? What if I want to stay? Georgia squeezed his hand. What if the safest place I've ever felt isn't a cabin in Montana or a compound in Brooklyn, it's wherever you are? Silence stretched between them. Then Flavio leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, she smiled. But I'm choosing you anyway. He kissed her. Soft at first, tentative, like he was afraid she'd disappear. Then deeper, more certain, a promise sealed in the darkness. When they finally broke apart, Georgia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, burning, unshakable hope. There's one more thing, Flavio said quietly. What? The baby. He glanced down at her belly. I know Callum was the father. I know you loved him. And I would never try to replace. Flavio. He stopped. Georgia took his hand and pressed it against her stomach. The baby kicked strong, insistent right against his palm. This child needs someone who will love them, protect them, be there when it matters. She met his eyes. Blood doesn't make a father, choice does. And I'm choosing you if you want to be chosen. Flavio's eyes glistened. For a moment, the ghost who had spent 10 years running finally looked like he'd found home. I want it, he said, more than anything. Georgia smiled. And for the first time in months, she believed everything was going to be okay. The Baldy Council convened 3 days later. 47 members gathered in the grand hall of Enzo's estate, the largest assembly in 2 decades. They came from New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Boston, old blood, and new money. Men and women who had built fortunes on loyalty and fear. Tonight, they would decide the fate of 2 traitors and witness the resurrection of a ghost. Georgia watched from the balcony above the hall. She wasn't allowed on the floor outside her blood, enemy name, but Flavio had insisted she see this. Closure, he called it. The end of everything that had hunted her for months. Beside her stood Mira Fossetti, the accountant's daughter whose flash drive had toppled an empire. She was 34, quiet, fierce, a survivor who had spent 10 years waiting for this moment. Are you nervous? Mira asked. Terrified, Georgia admitted. You? I've been nervous for a decade. Tonight, I'm just relieved. Below them, the council fell silent as Enzo Baldi rose from his seat at the head of the table. The Don looked different than he had 3 days ago. The bruises had faded. The cuts had healed. But something else had changed, something in his posture, his presence. He stood taller, spoke clearer, looked like a man who had reclaimed his purpose. Brothers, sisters, family. Enzo's voice carried through the hall. We gathered tonight to address a betrayal that spans 15 years. A betrayal that cost us money, trust, and blood. A betrayal orchestrated by a man I called brother. He gestured toward the doors. Silvio Conti was brought in, shackled, limping, defiant. His shoulder was bandaged from the sniper's bullet, but his eyes still burned with contempt. Silvio Conti, Enzo's voice hardened. You stole from this family, manipulated its members, attempted to murder its Don, and worst of all, you convinced me my own son was dead. Murmurs rippled through the council. Flavio stepped forward from the shadows. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, whispers. A few council members rose from their seats in shock. Flavio Baldi, the ghost, the dead heir, the traitor they'd been told to forget, stood before them, alive and unbroken. 10 years ago, Flavio said, Silvio ordered me to execute a pregnant woman. When I refused, he told my father I had gone rogue, that I was a liability, that I needed to be eliminated. He turned to face the council. My father believed him. Why wouldn't he? Silvio was his most trusted advisor, his brother in everything but blood. Flavio's voice cracked. I spent a decade believing my own father wanted me dead, and Silvio let me believe it because a living heir was a threat to his ambitions. Enzo spoke again. The evidence is irrefutable. Bank records, witness testimony, confessions from Silvio's own lieutenants. This council must now render judgment. The vote was swift. 47 hands raised. Unanimous. Silvio Conti was sentenced to exile, stripped of his name, his assets, his protection. He would be released at the border of Baldi territory with nothing but the clothes on his back. If he ever returned, the sentence would be death. "Take him," Enzo commanded. Silvio was dragged toward the doors, screaming curses that echoed off the walls. But before he disappeared, he locked eyes with Flavio. "This isn't over," Silvio spat. "Ghosts don't stay buried forever." Flavio didn't flinch. Neither do I. The doors slammed shut. Declan Drummond's judgment came next. Georgia's heart clenched as her brother was brought before the council, cuffed, pale, terrified. He looked smaller than she'd ever seen him. Younger. Like the boy who used to sneak her extra dessert when their father wasn't looking. Enzo studied him coldly. "Declan Drummond, you allied with Silvio Conti, provided resources for his coup, kidnapped a woman under Baldi protection. I also have information." Declan's voice was steady despite his fear. "Silvio's network extends beyond your territory. Weapons shipments, political contacts, names you don't have. I can give you everything." The council stirred. Enzo raised a hand for silence. "Why should we trust you?" "You shouldn't." Declan glanced up at the balcony at Georgia. "But my sister vouched for me, and she's the only person in this room who knows who I really am." Enzo followed his gaze. His eyes met Georgia's. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Enzo nodded. "Declan Drummond will provide full cooperation. In exchange, his life will be spared, but he will remain under Baldi's supervision until his information is verified. Any deception, any betrayal, and the sentence becomes death." Declan exhaled. Understood. He was led away not to execution, but to custody. A chance, more than he deserved, but exactly what Georgia had asked for. The final matter was Georgia herself. Enzo called her down from the balcony. She descended the stairs slowly, aware of every eye on her, the pregnant outsider, the enemy's sister, the woman who had somehow survived everything this world had thrown at her. She stopped before the dawn. "Georgia Drummond." Enzo's voice was unreadable. "You carry no Baldi blood. Your brother waged war against this family. By every law we hold, you should be our enemy." Georgia lifted her chin. "And yet I'm still standing here." Something flickered in Enzo's eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. "My son loves you. It wasn't a question." "I love him too." "And the child you carry?" Georgia's hand moved to her belly. "This child will be raised by people who choose to be their family. Blood doesn't make loyalty. Choice does." Enzo studied her for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, Georgia." The hall erupted in murmurs. Flavio moved to Georgia's side, taking her hand, squeezing tight. She shook Enzo's hand. And just like that, the enemy's sister became the Don's daughter. 6 months later, the nursery smelled like lavender and new beginnings. Georgia stood by the crib, watching her daughter sleep. Rosalie Callum Baldi, named for Flavio's mother and the man who had given Georgia this precious gift. 6 weeks old, dark hair like Callum, eyes like Georgia, a future brighter than anything either parent had ever imagined. Flavio appeared in the doorway. "She's still sleeping?" "Miraculously." Georgia smiled. "I give it 20 minutes." He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder as they both gazed at their daughter. "She's perfect," he murmured. "She's stubborn, already. She gets that from her mother." Georgia laughed softly. "Probably. The past 6 months had transformed everything. Silvio's exile had held. Reports placed him somewhere in South America, broken, bitter, forgotten. His network had been dismantled piece by piece, thanks largely to Declan's cooperation. Declan himself had surprised everyone. Under Baldi's supervision, he'd provided everything he promised: names, routes, contacts. The information had helped Enzo secure 3 new territories and neutralize 2 rival operations before they could form. Slowly, grudgingly, the council had begun to trust him. Georgia visited him once a month. Their conversations were difficult. Years of pain didn't heal overnight, but they were talking, rebuilding, finding their way back to something that resembled family. He asked about Rosalie again. Georgia had told Flavio after her last visit. "What did you say?" "I said maybe. When she's older. When I'm ready." Flavio had nodded. He never pushed, never judged. He understood that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. Enzo had changed too. The Don who had once terrified Georgia now bounced Rosalie on his knee every Sunday, singing Italian lullabies in a voice surprisingly gentle. He'd stepped back from daily operations, transitioning leadership to Flavio while remaining as advisor. "The Empire needs young blood," he'd said at the ceremony that made Flavio the new Don. "And I need to learn how to be a grandfather." Georgia had watched from the front row, Rosalie in her arms, tears streaming down her face, not from sadness, from something she'd almost forgotten existed. Joy. The wedding happened in spring. Small, intimate, just family and the few council members who had become genuine friends. The ceremony took place in the estate's garden, the same garden where Georgia had once felt like a prisoner. Now it felt like home. Mira Fossetti served as maid of honor. She'd become Georgia's closest friend, two survivors bound by shared trauma and unexpected hope. Mira had started a foundation for women escaping dangerous situations, funded quietly by Baldi money. Redemption came in many forms. Enzo walked Georgia down the aisle. "You know," he said quietly as they approached Flavio, "when my son first brought you here, I thought you were a liability. And now? Now I think you're the best thing that ever happened to this family." He squeezed her arm. "Thank you for giving me my son back." Georgia kissed his cheek. "Thank you for letting me stay." The vows were simple. No poetry, no grand declarations, just two people who had survived the impossible, promising to keep choosing each other. "I spent 10 years as a ghost," Flavio said, holding Georgia's hands. "Running, hiding, believing I didn't deserve to be loved. Then I found you pregnant, hunted, fierce, and you reminded me what it meant to be alive." Georgia's eyes glistened. "Flavio, you gave me purpose. You gave me hope. You gave me a family I never thought I'd have." He glanced at Rosalie, cradled in Mira's arms nearby. "I promise to spend every day earning what you've given me. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and love you. Not because I have to, but because I choose to, always." Georgia took a breath. "I came into this world running," she said, "from my past, from my brother, from enemies I didn't choose. I thought safety meant disappearing, becoming no one, belonging nowhere." She squeezed his hands. "Then you showed up at my door and turned my whole life upside down. You were difficult and silent and absolutely infuriating." The crowd laughed softly. "But you were also brave and kind and loyal beyond anything I'd ever known. You saved my life. You saved our daughter's life. And somewhere along the way, you saved my heart." Flavio's eyes glistened now too. "I choose you, Flavio Baldi. Today, tomorrow, every day after. You're my home." They kissed. The garden erupted in applause. And Georgia Drummond, once hunted, once alone, once convinced she'd never escape the darkness, finally stepped into the light. 1 year later, Rosalie took her first steps in the same garden where her parents were married. Georgia watched her toddle across the grass, arms outstretched, determination blazing in those dark little eyes. Flavio crouched a few feet away, encouraging her with open arms. "Come on, Piccola, you can do it." Rosalie wobbled, steadied, took another step. And then she was in Flavio's arms, giggling as he lifted her into the air. Georgia felt tears prick her eyes. This was what survival looked like. Not just enduring, not just escaping, but building something beautiful from the ashes, choosing hope over fear, choosing love over loneliness, choosing family not the one you're born into, but the one you create. Flavio carried Rosalie over to Georgia. The three of them stood together in the afternoon sun, a family forged from chaos, bound by choice, unbreakable. "Happy?" Flavio asked. Georgia looked at her daughter, at her husband, at the life she never thought she'd have, happier than I ever knew I could be. He kissed her forehead. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of wind through the trees sounded almost like a promise. The worst was over. The best was just beginning. A moral of the story: the families we're born into don't define us, the families we choose do. Survival isn't just about escaping danger. It's about finding the courage to trust again, to love again, to build something new from the wreckage of the past. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it can mean freedom. And sometimes the people we least expect become the ones who save us, not because they have to, but because they choose to. In the end, home isn't a place, It's the people who make us feel safe enough to stop running.